The histogram is maybe the most important aspect of digital camera exposure and post-processing, and a lot of people don't get it. So let's go over it real quickly. I have Photoshop open here and some pictures from Peru. This is the histogram up here. It looks just like the histogram that you'll see in your camera. Every digital camera can show a histogram, even your smartphone probably. You just dig through the options and visit sdp.io/tutorial for a tutorial that will show you how to view the histogram on your camera. The histogram tells you whether your picture is overexposed or underexposed, and it's useful because you can't just look at the back of your camera and know that for sure, because there are so many other influences on how you see the picture, including the brightness of the screen and the ambient light and just your own kind of personal preferences. But the histogram don't lie. It will tell you if something is blown out or washed out. Let's look at this first picture here. You can see this picture is made up of mostly midtones. The sky here is mostly grays, and this ground here is actually pretty bright. Now, as we look at the histogram, we see a pretty well-formed histogram. Over here on the left, we have, it's like a bar graph, and the higher up it goes, the more of that particular brightness you see in the image. So on the left side here, we have the shadows. And because it peaks up a little bit right here, that means there are some shadows in the image. And those shadows probably represent the dark parts of the motorcycle here. As we go towards the upper middle tones here, you'll see a big spike. And that's probably because of all the clouds and background that we have here. Almost all the brightness of the image is in that sort of area on the brightness. And then as we get towards the highlights, you can see there's nothing that's really touching the right side. There's almost bright in there, but there's not quite, so it kind of fades off. Let's look at an image that has a little more of an extreme histogram. This image here is shot into the sun, and the sun is up here. So this is Chelsea's picture, by the way, just credit where credit is due. It's a beautiful picture. The right side of the histogram here, you can see it spikes up to the top, and that means that there's a part of the picture that is pure white. As it kind of fades away, you can see there are some midtones here, but there's no part of the picture that is completely black. There's just no black point here. It only goes down to gray. And that's kind of a good indication that the picture might be a little washed out. And that's easy to fix in either Lightroom or Photoshop. In Photoshop, an easy way to do that is to add a levels adjustment layer. So I'll just add that layer here, and then I could just bring the black point up. And so now you can see I brought the black point up, and that changed the histogram. The histogram shifted a little bit to the left. So things that were dark gray became solid black now. And we'll probably see those solid blacks maybe in the deep shadows here, or maybe on the back of the animal there. I could go crazy just for the sake of demonstrating what a histogram does and change the black point way up here. And now you'll see we still have a spike on the right, but we also have a spike on the left. This is the original histogram, and I've just modified the black and, well, just the black point, and Photoshop kind of adjusted the other things. Let's look at another picture. This picture, again, even if we don't look at the histogram, you could probably predict that the histogram would spike over on the right side, just because looking at the picture, there's a lot of bright sky in here. And these clouds, they're like almost overexposed. You can see they're not quite touching the right side. If something's touching the right side, that means it's completely blown out. And in a JPEG file, you wouldn't be able to recover it. In a RAW file, you might be able to recover it in your RAW processor, like Camera Raw or Adobe Lightroom. This is a well-exposed picture. You can see from the histogram here that there are black points and there are white points. And that's what I always like to see. I always like to see a little bit of white and a little bit of black in an average picture. We could, however, make this picture washed out. And this is a really common problem that we see. I could drag these sliders down and push the histogram into the middle. If you see a histogram that looks like that, your picture is washed out. And I can't tell you how many pictures we get submitted to us that are a little bit washed out. I have a whole video dedicated to fixing that, sdp.io/top tip. Type that in and it will take you to that video. But if you see that, basically you want to adjust the black and white points until it looks a little bit better. In Lightroom, you can do that by using the develop module for a picture. Let's go back to this one. And then dragging the black point down to make the black point darker and the white point up to make the white point brighter until you see a good histogram. Now, that overdid it on that picture because the original image wasn't actually washed out. Let's look at another picture. This image you can see has a lot of extremes in it. The histogram is shaped more like a U than a hill in the middle. If the histogram is shaped like a hill, the image might look a little bit washed out. If it's shaped like a U, it's going to be very high contrast. This is a high contrast image composed mostly of deep shadows here on this wall and bright, bright skies. Whether or not that's okay, there's not a rule for that. It depends on the style that you're going for. The contrast works for this image, so I might not want to change it, though I might want to add a black point. Now this image, again, look at the histogram. It's shaped more like a U instead of a hump. The U means it's a high contrast image for better or worse. If that's consistent with the style, then that's great. Now, let's look at this image over in Lightroom, just because images are a little bit easier to do this type of editing in Lightroom. And if we wanted to, we could brighten up these midtones because you can see like these midtones probably describe her, but she's the focus of the picture. So it might be better to make her a little bit brighter. And then now we've overexposed the sky because I slid the whole exposure to the right. I could bring the highlights down. Now, as I bring those highlights down, watch what happens to the histogram. You see, not the whole histogram is shifting very much, but the right side of the histogram, the highlights, are shifting a lot. If I use the shadow slider here, you can guess which part of the histogram is going to move, right? Just the shadows here. So I'll just drag the shadows up and you'll see those shadows move, but the highlights really didn't change. Now, there are two different types of histograms that you'll encounter. The Luminance histogram looks like this. It's just basically white, and it describes the brightness of the image. The Luminance histogram would be identical for both black and white and color images. You can also choose on a lot of cameras to see the individual colors separated like this. Here you can see the red, blue, and green channels. All colors of light are composed with red, blue, and green primary colors. You can see that there's a lot of blue in the image just because the blues are a little bit brighter than the greens and the red, and that's because, well, the sky is blue. Now, that's useful information. It can often tell you that the white balance is a little bit wrong. Like if you were to take a picture of a white wall and you saw that the blues were brighter than the reds, that would indicate that the color balance was a little bit off and needed to be shifted more to the warm side so that those reds would raise up some. You don't really have to worry about color histograms. I don't find them all that useful. I really just prefer to use the luminosity histogram. Anyway, I hope that has helped you understand how to use the histogram. If you see images that have histograms that look like this means your picture is just flat out underexposed. You can see it has shadows and midtones, but no proper highlights. If you see a histogram that looks like that, you should add exposure compensation to your camera. Visit sdp.io/tutorial to find a tutorial for your specific camera that will show you how to use the exposure compensation properly. The reason it's particularly vital to make sure that the right side of the histogram is filled up is that this is the sweetest part of your picture. This right here, that is the cleanest part of the image. Data in this part of the histogram has about 8 times less noise than data in this part of the histogram. That's why your shadows always look so noisy. So it's easy to lower the exposure in post, but if you underexpose the picture and you need to brighten it, that means your image is going to have 2, maybe 4 times more image than necessary. Just watch that histogram, do what they call shooting to the right, which is making sure when you take the picture, there's something in this right side. Especially if you post-process, you can always bring it back down. You'll just end up with a cleaner image. If you want more tips about photography, check out my book, Stunning Digital Photography. You can pick it up on Amazon or at sdp.io/store. I also have books on using Lightroom and Photoshop. Post-processing is a great way to improve your photography too. They each come with tons of videos and other benefits like Facebook groups where you can get peers who are also learning photography to help you out. sdp.io/store or Amazon, or of course, subscribe. It's free and will give you lots more photography videos. Bye.